traitor or not? To answer this question, you gotta know Julius Caesar a little bit better. So Gaius Julius Caesar was born into a Patrician family, which means that's a ruling class family. Noble, the Julii, or the Julii. So this family claimed descendantry from Julius. Another name he went by was like Ascanius? Ascanius? I never know how to pronounce these names. Pronunciation aside, he's legendary king of Alba Longa. Not to be confused with the island of Elba. Alba is a city in Italy. Okay? So this legendary king is said to be the son of Aeneas, from Troy. You know that hero? Do you remember Aeneas was said to be like the son of Venus? Man, these people and their associations with gods and goddesses. I think it's safe to say that he might have had a god complex. So despite this ancient pedigree, the Julii did not exercise political control very much. But at some point in the early 1st century, their fortunes improved. And this was due to Gaius Julius Caesar's father, who happened to also go by Gaius Julius Caesar. Now, his daddy was the governor of Asia. Now, the province of Asia, back 2,000 years ago, wasn't like modern day Asia. It was like the front stoop of Asia. It was like actually only the front end of Turkey. The Pearl, Byzantium, aka Constantinople, named after Constantine I in 300 and something AD, aka modern day Istanbul. Why is it important? Because it is front and center on the Bosphorus Strait, which is the access way to, I think, the Black Sea, between Black Sea and Mediterranean. Major trade hub. So his daddy is in some serious power. But the chessboard isn't finished being laid. His daddy's sister, so his aunt, Julia, marries Gaius Marius. Do we know who he is? Why, he's just about one of the most prominent political figures of the Republic. He's the victor of the Jugurthine and Cumbric Wars, as well as nominated consul of Rome 7 times. He almost needs his own series. In part 2, I'll go into Gaius Marius and Sulla and how Julius Caesar came to power. Oh yeah. So, part 2, was Brutus a hero of the Republic, or was he a traitor? And like I said in part 1, to even get a sense of the situation of that time, you have to understand Julius Caesar. And to understand Julius Caesar, you have to understand the world he was brought up in. And the world that he came to power in was a very bloody one. It was like 200 years of back-to-back slaughter the one in power. And the current people in power were Sulla and Gaius Marius. And you remember Gaius Marius from the previous video? That was his uncle, Julius Caesar's uncle, married to his aunt, Julia. Now that dude could fight some battles, and it makes you wonder, how many conversations did Julius Caesar have with this general? Because this guy won many, many wars. Literally, the battles are so numerous that I'd waste time listing them here. And you remember I said that he was consul of Rome 7 times? Yeah, that's a lot. Despite his laundry list of accomplishments, he's most notable for bringing the heat against Sulla, the man who brought back dictatorship to Rome, the doucheman himself. Now, Sulla's been blamed for things called proscriptions, but Marius did it too when he was in power. Okay. What are these? What are proscriptions? It's like license to bloodbath. It's a license to kill. Basically, you write a guy's name down and you say, hey, go get him. So, I don't know. If you've ever been on my lives, you might have heard me rant about Crassus. And Crassus's dad was involved in one of Sulla's proscriptions. And Crassus had to go live in a cave for a while. Literally, this dude lived in a cave, and he later became the richest guy in the world. I can even trump that. He's said to be the richest guy in the history of all time. But I'll get back to him because he's actually relevant to Julius Caesar, okay? Okay. So these proscriptions, license to kill. Julius Caesar is growing up in this time period, and families are being wiped out. Families of power. The Patrician families. And he's the nephew of Gaius Marius. Is that a target on your back, Caesar? Yeah, I think that's a target on your back. I wonder if they painted Rome red. So part 3 of, was Brutus a hero, or was he not? I'm sorry, I can't stop laughing because paint the town red. It made me think, what's the origin of this phrase? Were these like Vikings that are like, let's go paint the town red? I have such a morbid sense of humor. Oh god, I gotta Google this. Give me a second. Alright, I'm back. At least it was just mischief and fun, not the morbid thoughts that I was having. Alright, gotta get my composure. Now you're probably wondering, where's Daddy? Where's Gaius Julius Caesar Sr.? That is a tongue twister. Now, story has it, he dropped dead putting on his shoes one day. Kind of a really inglorious way to go for a Caesar. And there really isn't much known about Julius Caesar's youth, like childhood youth. He had a couple of sisters, that much is known, so this may be why he had such good relationships with women. Although they were quite uncreative with their naming. Julia Major and Julia Minor. But really, what is a name? Moving on. It was a bloody time, okay? His formative years were super bloody, and that's probably why nobody was paying attention to record his youth, because they were too busy recording the bloodshed. As with today, when societies are on the brink of civil war, the political parties divide into just 2 parties. Oh yeah, I went there. So, the 2 parties, I'm going to butcher the names, Optimates and Populares. I don't know about you, but I want to be a part of the Populares crowd. Okay, I'm just joking. Alright, let me divide this up. Optimates was like the nobles, alright? They were the upper echelon, the higher class, the rich, okay? Populares was the people, the plebs, the plebeians, which Gaius Marius was. Now, I haven't gone into the background or the family history of Gaius Marius. I've only said that he was married to Julius Caesar's aunt, and that he had an impressive military career, and that he was consul of Rome 7 times. But he wasn't a member of the Patrician family lines, which means he was not noble. In fact, he was the son of a laborer. In other words, he was a pleb. He was a commoner. He had risen to his place of power by intellect, his ability to inspire his men in military. I'm almost positive this guy had a huge impact on Julius Caesar's formation of his intellect and his ability to see that the people needed to be on his side. Alright, I'm back for part 4 of Brutus. Hero or traitor? So as I stated in previous videos on this little series, to get to the root of whether or not Brutus is a hero or a villain, you need to know Julius Caesar. And to know Julius Caesar, you need to know the climate he grew up in. And unfortunately, media, and even the history books, only really focuses on his death and the aftermath of it. And the propaganda, which totally vilified Brutus. Which, granted, as has been brought up, sword in the back sure sounds like a villain. But I will get to that. I will get to why he might not be the villain that we all really are made to think. So, we've met his aunt. We've met his uncle on his father's side. Who's his mama? Her name was Aurelia Cotta, daughter of a woman named Rutilla and this other guy named Lucius Aurelius Cotta, or his brothers, Marcus Aurelius Cotta. You know, they weren't making very good records. But for argument's sake, let's say it's Lucius. He was also a Roman military commander, and he was also a consul of Rome and a senator. But Aurelia had 3 brothers, and those 3 brothers were kind of interesting. So just like with Gaius Marius, Julius Caesar likely had a bunch of chats with these other uncles. I'm guessing that this was a bit of a godfather situation. Without his good old pappy, he was probably semi-raised by the other patriarchal entities around him. Now, it's highly debatable how much influence that they had on Julius Caesar, because there isn't much record on where he was, what he was doing during his formative years. We just know where Julius Caesar was born, which was a neighborhood in Rome called Sooooo. Again, probably butchering the pronunciation. But that's another subject in history that deserves its own series. Because that neighborhood is... I mean, we're talking about Italy. Since when is it not history? But we'll just stop it here saying it's a famous neighborhood. But aren't they all? But I digress. Again, back to the uncles. And I will continue on with the uncles in more detail in part 5. I know this is turning into a long series. I'm sorry. It can't be some... So part 5. I'm going to try to breeze through this a lot faster because these are going a lot longer than I thought they would. But history is far more complicated than just black and white, good or bad. And was Brutus a hero or a villain? That's actually really not that easy to answer without knowing the history. Without knowing who Julius Caesar was and why he was the way he was. Now, in the previous videos, I focused on other family members, but I didn't focus on the matriarchal uncles. That was Julius's mother, Aurelia Cotta, her brothers. Now we had Gaius, Marcus, and Lucius. All of their names ended the same way, Aurelius Cotta. And the reason for this was because the Romans had a specific way of naming people, okay? Don't want to go on a sidebar, okay? So let's stay on track. So the first is Gaius. He was a speaker, an orator, a great talker. He wasn't so much a swordsman. So we've been talking about these great generals and whatnot, but this dude was a talker. But he was also a priest. And I don't mean the, oh, Holy Father kind. I mean the old gods, but actually I mean the new gods. But I mean the old gods, but I mean the new gods. I'm talking about Jupiter, Juno, Mars, Mercury, Venus. You get my drift? Now why I say the new gods is because they were basically a knockoff of the Greek ones, okay? Okay? That's another history lesson. And we'll just not go there, okay? But we will go into a brief little sidebar of the priesthood, because that is somewhat relevant to Julius Caesar later. So Gaius was also a priest, which was a position that you held for life. And these positions were held by magistrates. And magistrates could only really be plebeians prior to 300 BC. That's just the way the cookie crumbled. You know, because only the nobles can really touch the feet of the gods. It was still pretty rare at the time of Gaius's priesthood for anybody lower than plebeian to be a priest. Now, he was basically granted Gaul, and the reasons why, nobody knows. No records survive. But he likely had some level of comfort towards the end of his life because, you know, Sulla was suppressed and he had some power. He wasn't a dude to raise the sword because he fought with his words. He swayed the crowd with naught but his tongue. Sound like the silver-tongued devil himself, Julius? Not much is known, but I'm guessing Julius Caesar spent some significant time with Uncle Gaius. Just a wild guess. So I'm going to go into the other 2 uncles in the next vids. Okay, part 6 of Brutus, hero or villain, and of learning more about Julius Caesar because his past is the root of that answer. Now, Julius Caesar's matriarchal uncles. I talked about Gaius in the last video. I'm going to talk about Marcus in this video. And if we're lucky, we're going to talk about Lucius too. So this is a little bit inglorious. So this is not really a glowing recommendation, but he's most known for being defeated by King Mithridates the Sixth, who was a descendant of Cyrus the Great. He's known as the Poison King. He really liked to poison. There's a long history of poisoning in that empire. Anatolia really liked to poison people. You know, like sword in the back is considered bad. What about poison? But, you know, not one to let, you know, his bad reputation be what he's known for. He decided to take a city on the Black Sea, Heraclea, and lay siege to it 2 years. He gets captured. And he needs to be saved by his co-consul, Lucius Licinius Lucilius. That's a tongue twister. I hope I don't have to say that name again. But you know, this guy has a way with spinning a tale in his favor because he returns to Rome as a hero, as a conqueror. He beat Mithridates the Sixth. But you know, that good rep didn't last long because pretty soon he was accused of misappropriating war goods, booty from Anatolia. It seems that everybody believed him because he was expelled from the Senate. They must have had good enough evidence. I don't know if he did it, but I'm guessing he did. I mean, I'm pretty sure his nose was bent out of shape. He needed to soothe the ego. Okay, now the third brother, Lucius. Now, he had different positions. Now, 2 of the brothers held consulships, but otherwise, they operated in different parts of the governing, you know. But Marcus and Lucius were the ones who operated as consuls of Rome. But Lucius was also a praetor and a censor. Now, in ancient Rome, there are 2 praetors, and they are the position just below consulship. Praetor did the games. They even exercised the authority in government when the consul was gone, yada yada. He was also the censor. And I don't mean censoring word. I mean they counted the population and they handled finance. Part 7 will be tomorrow.